The breeze just died down for a moment, and so I'm going to catch this opportunity to do a fun message that I've been looking forward to sharing with you as we come upon another quarter point of the year. We're at the halfway point between the fall equinox and the winter solstice, and it is in sort of mainstream culture understood as Halloween. But I just love the spiritual and Celtic roots of Halloween, which I'll share with you here. So the Gaelic festival of Samhain is the roots of Halloween. In Anglican terms, it's referred to as All Hallows Eve. But Samhain in Scottish Gaelic, actually, and also in Irish Gaelic, means literally summer's end. And it's the end of the harvest season. So this is another beautiful agricultural celebration within pre-Christian spirituality, pre-Christian agricultural life. And it's just such a lovely reminder of the cyclical transitions of the seasons that I think really ground us in this really complex and ever-changing world. And Samhain is no different. In fact, it's one of my favorite quarter points of the year because there is this thin line or this thin space between light and dark and death and life. And I think with many of the different cultures that celebrate this time as honoring of ancestors, there's no coincidence there because there is this really feeling of transition and liminality between these two spaces that oftentimes we sort of separate and hold apart. But there's a real unity at this point in the year between, again, that light and dark and also death and life, and closing the doors on one chapter and opening the doors on another. And that's what my work is all about with women who are transitioning out of toxic relationships, toxic workplaces, and finding new life and new authenticity in the new choices and paths that they embark on. So a little bit of Samhain is related to, again, this agricultural season ending. And what's really lovely about it in terms of it being a fire festival, it parallels the spring fire festivals of Beltane in Celtic spirituality. And really, it's a practical reason in terms of building these large bale fires to run the cattle through in order to purify them for, in the springtime, coming out into the fields, and at the end of fall, going back into the stables. And running through the smoke of these bale fires helps purify the cattle and reduces parasites and exposure to disease. But there's also this crossing through of this threshold into a new season. And in this case, a season of protection and kind of hibernation and kind of turning inward, both for the creatures of the field and also as humans. This is a really important time of turning into oneself and assessing one's own personal and more deeply understood spiritual needs. So the other element with honoring ancestors during this time of year is really powerful as well. Many people are familiar with the Mexican celebration of Dios de los Muertos, but this is also very similar in Celtic spirituality, where as the farmers are coming in from the fields, it is understood that they are walking side by side the ancestors who have passed away, also coming in from the fields with those who have been working hard and laboring on the fields. So it's this beautiful honoring of the sacredness of life and lives that have passed before us. And what's really interesting about the trick-or-treat tradition is very much connected to this as well. Children would go door to door offering to pray for people's deceased ancestors in exchange for sweet cakes, i.e. candy this time of year. And when the wave of Irish immigration happened in the mid-1800s here in the United States, the tradition of trick-or-treating took root. So it really has these beautiful roots of honoring individuals who have passed away and honoring sort of the liminal space between life and death. And as I work with women and coach women who are making important transitions in their own lives, this tradition and practice of Samhain, or summer's end, is such an important metaphor to keep in mind as we make decisions about what are our most core values, what is our core sense of identity, and whether the people and the environments in which we find ourselves are reinforcing that or rejecting that. And I think for women who are coming out of toxic situations in both their personal and professional lives, coming back to a sense of their true north in terms of what their values are and how they understand themselves as a person and a human being is such an important part of their next chapter of living an authentic and thriving life. And so as we see in this season, these brilliant colors around us, and even in this tree behind me that's just beginning to turn, it's a real reflection of the coming back to self and the returning of one's true colors that can come with deep intentionality and deep focus around what kind of life we want to live moving forward.